First of all, as far as I understand, this film took you something like a year to shoot.
We started shooting at the end of 2016, and then we finished at the end of 2018. So we were actually editing during part of the post-production. And we were still, there's also the poems and the songs that we were recording. That was actually the last thing that we recorded. And that was the end of 2018.
Okay. Can you tell me about how you started this? You are not from that area, as far as I understand.
No, I'm from the north.
Okay.
So they house.
Yeah. And how did you decide to make this film?
I was part of the February 20th movement, which was the 2011 uprising. When the revolutions in Egypt and Tunisia, we also had a very strong movement here.
Yeah.
And that's how I came across the first time I saw some videos of the protests in Imedra, which were completely separate from this very urban movement that we had the February 20th movement was a very urban movement. And so I was very intrigued by how they were organized specifically. The Agro, I'm Moroccan, and I didn't know that we have democracy before, a very old form of democracy that we didn't need the French to come and teach us anything really. We had everything there. So I was really intrigued by this indigenous form of democracy, of organization. And I went there actually as an activist. I didn't go there as a filmmaker the first time. It was to go show solidarity, to understand what was happening. And then, for the first year or so, I didn't even think of filming anything. I was just there helping them write. If they needed help writing statements in English, press releases, graphic design, social media campaigns against the mining company, this kind of thing. And then around the end of 2016, there was the COP22 conference here in Marrakesh, and the mine was one of the sponsors. So they asked me to make a short film that would basically talk about how 300 kilometers south from Marrakesh, where all these politicians were coming together, sponsored by the mining company, that this was what was happening 300 kilometers away. And after that, it came very organically. We decided kind of almost together to make a feature film, because a short film is not enough. Even a feature film, I was thinking of making 3 feature films about this movie, because there's so much to say about it.
You can actually.
Yeah, but now it's too late. I think it's. Yeah.
Okay, great. I have probably you were asked this question a lot, but the way what do they call themselves? The Imediazan, the poets of struggle.
Yeah,
they struggle with. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, not just of struggle. Actually, they're poets in general, but they've always played this role, historically speaking, of documenting historic events, documenting of criticizing, but also of love and hate and life in general. So it's not limited to just struggle, but they did have this very important role, because a lot of Amazigh tribes didn't write, so everything was
oral,
was documented orally. So I was very interested for the film in using an oral basis instead of a written basis for the film. I mean, even though I had to write, for example, a treatment or to get funding, etc., I don't really believe in actually writing a documentary. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I this oral method and is much more, I think, interesting, but also much more accessible to people in these regions, and especially women who are not literate. So
I was going to ask you about it now. The women there are so they are very strong. They are struggling. Most men are in the prison, or some of them are in the prison. So it seems that they take up the role for struggling. Can you tell me a little bit about the situation of the women there?
Yeah, well, I would say about 70 to 80% of the movement is women. It wasn't always like that from the beginning, but women slowly. I mean, after the men were put in prison, the women sort of took the relay. I don't know how
the active role, maybe you can say.
Yeah, they just sort of they saw this necessity of being there to protect their sons or their husbands, and so in the beginning, the protest camp, it was just men, but eventually the women started building cabins there, and you have all these songs that came out about them climbing to the mountain to defend their children in struggle. But you also realize, I mean, if you look at peasant movements or environmental peasant movements in general, well, at least in Morocco, like there's also the Soulaliyet movement, which is the landless women's movement. What I've realized is that women are often at the forefront of these struggles, especially because men have become proletarianized. That is, they are no longer peasants in the pure sense of the term. They've migrated to the city. They're now wage workers who work for somebody. They're not working the land anymore. But the women stay in the villages and they continue to work the land. So there's still this very strong attachment to the land, but also a very strong attachment to oral traditions. So there's this link there between oral tradition and working the land. So they have this very strong relationship, which means when you want to take away that land, they're the first that are affected, not the men. So while, for example, a lot of the young men in the movement, one of their main, I mean, there were different, I mean, Imedra is not just one solid block where everybody wants the same thing. You have different demands that kind of converge. So the young men want jobs, they're unemployed. The women are more affected by the lack of water because they're the ones that have to go get water and wash the clothes, and they use, I mean, for domestic use, they're the ones that, you know, when they turned on the tap, the water didn't come out, and so it became a necessity to protest because they need that water to do their work, irrigate, etc.
Okay, good, very good. I have a few more questions. One of them is, did you have any problems while shooting the film, like with the police or authorities?
Yes, yes, and I mean, yes and no. No, in the sense that at the protest camp was an area that was sort of an autonomous zone where the police didn't come to the protest camp. They had been able to sort of create this liberated zone, if you will. So we could really take our time. It was very comfortable to shoot on the protest camp because, you know, we had the cameras, everybody could help, the children would carry the tripods, you could take it slowly. It was very comfortable. But then when you want to shoot in the village, you have the sort of mukhabarat kind of thing going on. So you have this, you have to be more careful. And
like
so
they were spies trying to listen.
Yeah.
And,
exactly. But also I'm shooting without a permit. And in Morocco, you have to have a permit to shoot. So they just can't catch me with a camera and a tripod in my hand. So there are ways that we can play hide and seek with them.
Okay.
So it's just, but when you have the community with you, supporting you in making the film, then the community actually helps you. And you have your own spy, so they'll tell you the spy is over there. You should go from here, sort of. So that helps. So that's how, I mean, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say, I didn't feel really threatened at any moments. And well, I did actually a couple times, a little bit. But
okay, but yeah, nothing serious happened.
It was nothing serious, no.
Okay. How many were you on the team? Were you like how many people were you, or were you alone?
The shooting team, the team on the field. It was two, depending on the time. Like it wasn't consistent. But I would say two people. Me with the camera and a friend of mine, Jalal, on the sound. And then sometimes I had someone else on the camera. So about half of the images that you see were shot by myself and half by Yasser. But yeah, but it was mostly two people, and sound was very, very important. Yeah. So sometimes we would go there just to shoot just sound, not even, I wouldn't even pick up the camera. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But then you also have the whole community is helping. So whenever
that's why I asked.
There is always somebody there to help.
Yeah.
I was going. So it could really vary. I mean, it could go to, two people who are, you could call it professionals, and then the actual team is much, much, much bigger.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your relationship with the villagers, with the strugglers. From the film, we understand that it's very good, right? Because they, let you inside their homes. You had a good relationship.
I mean, it was a militant relationship. I can't be friends with everybody, but I made some really, really good friends there. It's just the way we made the film was, instead of having a production company make the film or going to ask the state for a permit to shoot, I went there and I asked them for the permit to shoot, the permit. And I think what keeps the good relationship is the transparency and the collective mode of production. So if the community is the producer, then they are invested in the film and they want the film to be the best that it can be. So they collaborate, and as long as you are honest and transparent, you say, this is how much funding I got, you show them the budgets, and you plan everything with them, then I think what we were trying to do was to experiment with a democratic model of filmmaking, filmmaking from the bottom up instead of from the top down. And for me, it's something that can be applied actually to any domain. For me, it's the most logical thing. If you're an engineer, you don't just decide you're going to make a bridge in this community from this place to this place, because if you were to ask the community, they would say, well, if you build it from here to here, you might affect Ali's orchard, which is right here, and the water which comes down from here is going to be affected, and you're going to have problems afterwards. That's local knowledge. The engineer, which comes from the States, doesn't necessarily take these voices into account. So for me, it's just how anything should be done is this local democratic model. So for me, I'm just working the way that I wish the world worked.
And I think that's why many activists have also become filmmakers, just, while supporting whatever they are supporting, they're also documenting. This is also very interesting. You started as an activist, and then you started doing this film. And in this way, I think there's some kind of a trust between you and the people who are struggling, right?
Yeah, I think if I wasn't, I don't know, if I wasn't an activist, the relationship wouldn't be the same, I think. I don't think there would be as much trust.
Yeah.
But actually, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. Actually, activism came later. Since I was 15, I've been making little films. But
okay.
Yeah, I guess with the 2011 movements, what I wanted to make films about is what changed there.
Okay. Did you study cinema or?
Yeah.
Okay. One more, a few more things. Actually, I should have asked this at the beginning, but Amussu, what's the meaning of that?
Movements.
This is not Arabic.
It's Tamazight.
What language do they speak?
Tamazight.
Say it again.
Tamazight.
Okay. But I heard some Arabic words too. In the language, I think there's some Arabic.
Yeah, a little bit, because Tamazight has been affected by, it has adopted some Arabic words, just by, through the politics of Arabization. The Moroccan state claims an Arab identity, even though, 60-70% of the population is Amazigh or Berber. The language has been affected by these politics of Arabization and Arabic schooling only, not teaching Tamazight in schools. I'm sure some of these problems would sound familiar to you in Turkey. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You have shown the film in some places. You have shown the film in some festivals, and or is it going to be the first? Okay. What reactions did you get in general? Were there any criticism, or how was it received, your film?
It's been overall very, very positive. I think the only criticisms that I've gotten aren't usually linked to the pacing of the film. Some people find it slow, but I think that's normal. We're used to Hollywoodian sort of cinematic language, so it's like so I don't mind. It's okay for me, this kind of criticism. I understand it. I know people are not used to this kind of way of doing cinema, but generally it's been very positive.
And so, what can you say about the future? Are you hopeful that your film may change something?
No, I don't think films can really change much. I think, when I first started making activist films, I was 19 and I had this really big hope, we can change the world with cinema. But, with time you realize you can't really change the world with cinema. But I think that films and little contributions, the accumulation of many, many, many little acts like this one, of making a film is what leads to systemic change. And that's what I actually try to do in my film. Is the film is all constructed around little tiny gestures: feeding a dog, harvesting, all these tiny gestures which accumulate and create this big movement, which is capable of changing history. But it has to be many people doing many little tiny things for us to be able to change it. So I do think in that sense it can, but only in the accumulation with a lot of other people performing similar gestures or acts like I did.
Okay, great. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything you would like to say, to add, related to the festival, related to other things?
I can't think of anything. My mind is just blank this morning. I'm not even speaking very well. I feel very slow.
Yeah, you have been tired. No problem. Okay, maybe one last question.
Sure.
What about the villagers? How do they feel about the future? The people there, the strugglers?
Well, not very hopeful because the protest camp was dismantled last year. Exactly a year and a month ago. And so a lot of the young men, at least a lot of them, immediately after the camp was dismantled, took to the road and went to the north, to the border with Spain, to try to cross to Europe. Because, the logic is, we tried asking for our rights so we can stay here. You don't want to give them to us, so we're going to go somewhere else. But it's not very helpful, to be honest.
Yeah, so sad, really.
In general, in Morocco right now, it's not a very hopeful time. Yeah.
Maybe not in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we have to go on.
Yeah.
We don't have the luxury of becoming hopeless, so
yeah,
we need to go on.
Yeah.
Okay, it was so nice talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best of luck in this festival and in your future festivals.
Thank you. Teşekkür ederim.